Hello, hi-fi friends. I am considering tossing the IEMA T9 Pro out of my system for good and replacing it with the Nobsound B100 amplifier instead. Now, before I do that, I want to tell you all about the B100 and get close and do a side-by-side comparison with the T9 Pro and ask you which one you would keep in your system. Let's start by looking at the B100 now. The B100 is a Class A amplifier from Nobsound, rated at 250 watts per channel. Okay, there's no way that can be right. All right, I'm reading the manual. Class A, 250 watts per channel. Wouldn't that like burn down your house? That would be one hot amplifier. I actually emailed Nobsound because I was so confused about the power consumption on this amplifier and whether or not it was truly Class A. Not to mention that I also watched another review on this product, and that reviewer said it was Class D. So I was very confused once I got this all set up and ready to go, and emailed Nobsound, and they actually confirmed that their manual was a misprint. It's not 250 watts, it's just 25 watts per channel, and it's not a Class A amplifier, it's actually Class AB. All of that makes a lot more sense. So, starting over, the B100 is a Class AB amplifier rated at 25 watts per channel. Now, one of the things you'll notice right away are the 4 tubes sitting on top of the unit. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I originally thought this might be a Class D amplifier with a tube preamp, but like I said, I emailed Nobsound and they said it's actually a tube preamplifier with traditional amplifier using traditional transistors. So it is Class AB. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about those tubes when I'm specifically comparing it to the T9 Pro, so stick around for that. Now, one thing that really impressed me when I got the B100 out of the box and started setting up was just how many input sources there is on the rear of this unit. You've obviously got the Bluetooth antenna. You've also got a USB interface. You've got a coaxial input, an optical input. You've got 2 auxiliary inputs, which is something that I want to highlight when comparing it to the T9 Pro. You've also got a 3.5 millimeter headphone output on the rear of the unit. Now, one other thing you'll notice on the rear of the unit is it can easily power 1 set of speakers, and you can easily connect your subwoofer via the subwoofer output. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is the B100 really going to replace the IEMA T9 Pro in my system? I've really enjoyed using this amplifier a lot, but I think it's worth getting up close and personal with both of these amplifiers because there are some quirks with the B100 that I will be able to better explain when I'm showing it to you side by side with the T9 Pro. So let me grab the camera and let's get up close and go through those differences now. Now, obviously, the main difference between these two are size. The Nobsound B100 is considerably larger than the smaller T9 Pro. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you've got 4 tubes with the B100 where the T9 Pro only offers 2. Now, this is important, I want to point out with the tubes because according to the Amazon listing specifically for the B100, it basically says that these tubes are not easy to find. And in order to replace them, you have to email Nobsound directly. Now, that seems pretty strange and makes me a little nervous because, you know, if a tube goes bad, are you going to actually be able to find one to replace? It also means you can't roll tubes with this amplifier and easily substitute something in if, for some reason, these were to become unavailable. Now, I imagine that these tubes are going to last a while, so that may not be an issue, but let's say you buy the B100 and use it for several years, and eventually these go out. Will Nobsound even still be around as a company and still have these tubes available? That's a question that I don't know the answer to. Meanwhile, with the T9 Pro, you can roll these tubes. Obviously, because you can roll these tubes, you can find replacements in the event that for some reason the provided tubes were to go bad or just disappear completely. So, kind of giving the IEMA T9 Pro a one-up here on the tube availability, at least between the 2 amplifiers, which I think is something that's important to consider when trying to decide between both of these or consider replacing the T9 Pro with the B100. Now, one of the other major considerations, I think, between the B100 and the T9 Pro is the fact that The B100 does not come with a remote control, which I find very interesting. I would assume that the B100 would actually come with a remote. Meanwhile, the T9 Pro obviously has this remote control that comes along with it. Now, this might actually just be a deal breaker for most people because, you know, it is interesting with a modern piece of gear to get up off the couch and adjust the volume. It also means that basically all of the functions up here on the top are done manually. And that's not that big of a deal, but when you're jumping between inputs and you get to, say, Bluetooth, it gets kind of hung up for a little bit while you're trying to go through all of these. And again, you're having to get up and actually change these manually. Meanwhile, with the T9 Pro, you can pretty much do everything with this remote, including adjusting the tone controls, right? Now, that's something that you cannot actually do on the B100. So again, that might be a deal breaker for folks because they may be able to fine tune the T9 Pro's tones, treble and bass with this remote. While the B100, you basically get the sound that you get. And that might not be something that folks are interested in. Now, one of my other major gripes about the B100 is that the power button is on the rear of the unit. Now, with the T9 Pro, you can power it off, you know, just right there, on, off. Super easy, and obviously, back to the remote, you can use the remote. But with the B100, you have to reach all the way around. It's actually up, the power switch is underneath, it's way back here, underneath all of your speaker connections, and it's a bit cumbersome to reach back there and switch it on and off, right? Now, you get kind of used to it after a while, reaching back around to try to power the thing on and off. But I'm not sure why Nobsound didn't just have this be a push button power on and off. That would have been a lot easier. Or just include a power button right here, because there's no remote. Reaching all the way around can be kind of annoying when trying to power on the B100. Now, one thing I do enjoy with the B100 is the number of RCA inputs, because they've given you 2 here instead of 1 on the IEMA T9 Pro. Now, one of my things with the Class D amplifiers is that they, just because of this one analog input, you do sort of run into, you know, a limit on the amount of sources that you could connect, whether that be a tape deck or a CD player or a turntable. You've really only got this one input here. Well, with the B100, technically, you could connect like to auxiliary 1. You could connect a turntable with a built-in phono preamp or an external phono preamp here, while also connecting a CD player. Now, a lot of people might connect a CD player with these digital inputs, and that's okay. You could also do that on the T9 Pro. But let's say, I don't know, you're like me and you have a cassette deck that you'd also like to run. You could run that into auxiliary 2 as well. So I do enjoy the fact that the B100 gives you just one more RCA input. I do think that that is a win over the limited connectivity of the T9 Pro. Lastly, I just want to mention that obviously the P100 is coming in at 25 watts per channel, and the IEMA T9 Pro is able to offer you a lot more power. Now, this is Class D amplification, while this is offering Class AB. So my biggest question was, when listening to these, was there that much difference in sound? Given this is Class AB, this is Class D. So many people just say Class D sounds horrible compared to Class AB. I thought this would be a good chance to listen and determine for myself. So let me put the camera back and hop on real quick and just show you some of the albums that I listened to while comparing these and tell you what I was able to hear. Now, after a long listening session comparing the two, I basically didn't hear that much difference in sound, which honestly surprised me. I was really struggling to try and hear a difference, considering the B100's Class AB and the T9 Pro is Class D. Now, I don't know if that means maybe Class D has come that far away in the sound signature to where it's just not that much of a drastic difference with Class AB, but I really struggled hard to hear a big sound difference. Now, one of the CDs I played is definitely not what I would consider an audiophile recording straight out of the gate, but played some catching up with Depeche Mode, and really just wanted to mention that because I finally got to see Depeche Mode live. Never seen them live. They put on a great show. Dave Kahn still's got all the dance moves. Like, I was blown away. Really great show. If they come to your town and you're a Depeche Mode fan, make sure you catch this tour. But listening to this CD between both amplifiers, I really couldn't hear that much of a difference. Now, where I could hear some sound signature differences was actually playing this new CD from PS Audio, which is The Art of Hi-Fi. Now, this is all based on percussion, and obviously with it being PS Audio, it's recorded in the most audiophile manner that it could be. And it was at this point where I was able to maybe hear just a wider soundstage with the B100 and the Class B AB amplification over the T9 Pro. It didn't blow the sound away in comparison to the T9 Pro, but there's like a lot of just, well, it's a whole CD on percussion, right? But there's like some gongs on these songs. And when they hit those, you know, really specific percussion instrumentations that ring out, it felt like with the Class AB amplification, it was just wider and more all-encompassing than the T9 Pro, which was just a little bit more direct. That's really the big sound differences that I heard when listening between these two amplifiers. So now that I've shown you both amplifiers, I would love to know, which one would you keep in your system? Would you toss out the T9 Pro like I threatened to do at the beginning of this video and substitute in the B100 for good? Or would you keep the T9 Pro and not bother with the B100 due to the fact that it has no remote control, it has no tone controls, the tubes are hard to find and can't be rolled, and some of the design features like that power switch on the rear is just a little bit kind of awkward overall. Now, what I would say is, if somebody were to not own either of these amplifiers and ask me which one they should buy, I would basically run through a few of those quirks with the B100 and tell them that it's not a bad amplifier by any means, especially when it comes to sound. I really enjoyed listening to music with the amplifier. I think I just missed some of those added on features that you get with some of the smaller Class D amplifiers that are common today. That especially are common with the T9 Pro. So what I would basically do is say, you're not really going to get one amazing sound over the other by choosing it. So your choice is going to come down to those extra features. Now for me, I sub gear in and out all the time. So I don't even know what amplifier I'm going to be listening to tomorrow. I've actually got to go through a stack of stuff and see what's up for review. So that means I'm keeping both the B100 and the T9 Pro. Now, as always, Nobsound sent me the B100 for free, but they did not pay me to make this review, and they didn't actually have any say-so in my comparison with the T9 Pro. But again, I'd love to know, if you had to choose between two of these in your system, which would you choose? Please let me know in the comments below. Now, you may have stumbled on this video because you're trying to decide between buying the original T9 from IEMA or the upgraded T9 Pro. I actually made a side-by-side comparison video of the original T9 and the T9 Pro and was able to show all the quirks that IEMA ironed out with the Pro version. If you'd be interested in watching that video, you can do so by clicking this video here.